Electric vehicles are hopeless in natural disasters. I mean, they're the only cars that can catch fire underwater for a start. The first thing to go out in a disaster is usually the electricity, so good luck getting to safety if your EV is out of charge. And if there are a few kilowatt hours left in it, they'll have probably been sucked dry by the overwhelmed electricity grid, draining your battery to try and prop itself up for a few minutes longer. PSA: if you live in an area prone to natural disasters, get a diesel truck and a few tanks of fuel for an emergency. And even when the disaster is over, EVs haven't finished causing trouble. Because if they get flooded, the water, especially if it's salt water from a storm surge, can short-circuit the battery and cause it to overheat and catch fire, days or weeks after the event. Worse still, a build-up of flammable gases ejected by an EV battery in an enclosed space can lead to a vapour cloud explosion, which is precisely what happened at Miami docks a few weeks ago, and only now are we hearing the full story. It's a miracle nobody was injured or even killed. Welcome back to MGUY, British engineer and lawyer, now Sydney-based YouTuber. Be sure to follow me on the usual socials for more content, links in the description, and please make sure you're subscribed and have enabled all notifications so you don't miss out on any future videos. And if you'd like to support this channel, why not buy me a coffee? Click the link in the description or scan the QR code on screen. I'm sure many of you will already follow Patrick over at Stash Training. He's a fire captain and expert on the risks of lithium-ion battery fires, but if you don't, I'll leave a link in the description. He was following up on the huge explosion at the port of Miami about 3 weeks ago, where a shipping container was literally blown to pieces, sending entire sides of it flying through the air. It was initially reported that this was a 20-foot container with 2 cars inside, but it's been revealed that it was twice that size and held 4 cars, 3 of which were EVs from the area of Florida hit by recent hurricanes and storm surges. Here's Patrick explaining what he discovered.
Here's the breakdown. A 2014 Ford Fusion. It had a salvage title, and it was from Homosassa, Florida. Now, this vehicle was an older hybrid electric vehicle. You can see slight damage to the trunk, and it doesn't look like it would actually be able to shut. There was a 2017 Chevy Volt. It had a certificate of destruction. It was from St. Petersburg, Florida, and it looks like it took a pretty good hit to the front driver's side. Mostly front end damage on this vehicle. 2018 Tesla Model X. It had a salvage title, and it was from Clearwater, Florida. It had some minor front end damage, but nothing too terrible. And then the last one, a 2021 Tesla Model S. This also had a salvage title. It was from Anna Maria, Florida, and this vehicle was clearly submerged in water. I'll come back to that. All these vehicles came from areas impacted by the recent storm surge from Hurricane Helene and Hurricane Milton. I've confirmed that it was one of the Tesla vehicles that caused this incident. And when you look at the damage from the 2021 Tesla Model S, you can see why this is likely to have caused that explosion. Looking at the photos, it's clear that this vehicle is severely flooded. Moisture and debris were inside of this car. It's very evident. And more importantly, somebody marked the water line on the side of the vehicle, and the auction house included the picture. Makes it pretty easy. It clearly shows that the high voltage battery of this vehicle was clearly submerged.
So what happens is that the salt water from the flood surge, which is comprised of essentially seawater that's been pushed inland, eventually makes its way into the high voltage battery, and salt water, being an excellent conductor of electricity, creates short circuits between the individual cells of the battery. The high current caused by these short circuits generates heat, which causes the cells to release highly flammable gas under pressure as the cell starts to disintegrate. The heat spreads from one cell to the next, there are thousands in a Tesla battery, and we get the familiar condition of thermal runaway. In the open air, the gas can disperse, and if a cell catches fire, it will only ignite the escaping gas near the battery, still bad enough as it's frequently like a blowtorch, sending flames horizontally out of the vehicle for several meters. However, as is the case here, in an enclosed space, that flammable gas cannot escape and builds up in the container, and if and when a cell catches fire, the entire container full of gas detonates in a violent and dangerous process known as a vapour cloud explosion. In this case, it was forceful enough to blow the container apart, and they aren't exactly flimsy. Unlike a petrol car, which you can drain the fuel from, You can never really take the energy out of a lithium-ion battery in the same way. Yes, they are less energetic when they are not charged, but the difference is surprisingly small, and even a discharged battery contains significant potential for mayhem, as Lowry would say on the Hydraulic Press channel. So just sharing a bit of extra information about the relationship between state of charge and energy released. This is a paper in a journal called In Compliance, and the paper's entitled Thermal Runaway Energy Release as a Function of the State of Charge. So if you take a look at this figure, you can see that at 100% state of charge, that's along the bottom axis, the amount of energy total in the blue dots is around 50 kilojoules of energy, but even at zero state of charge, you've got almost 30 kilojoules of energy release. Goes to show that the amount of energy stored in the battery, although it decreases as the state of charge decreases, there's still a hell of a lot of it, even in a fully discharged battery. Thankfully, this explosion happened in the open air on the dockside, rather than buried in a container ship in the middle of the Atlantic. Who knows what might have happened then? Anyone who thinks it's safe to park and charge these vehicles in underground car parks is either willfully blind or deluded. I mean, this is a Tesla which has okay quality control and safety systems. But just imagine when the US, Europe and Australia are flooded with cheap, crappy Chinese EVs with batteries that are no doubt riddled with defects just waiting to fail. If nothing else, this instance shows just how destructive EVs can be when damaged. And like I said, don't ever rely on one to save you in an emergency.